Alright, we are live. What is up, YouTube family? It is K-Rod here. I'm back with another good live stream for, the night. Sadly, I pretty much woke up at a wrong time. I've had some pretty weird nights of going to bed a little bit early, which I usually get a good 6 to 8 hours in. But whenever I do, how should I say, wake up in the middle of the night, I usually try to kill some time to try to put myself back to sleep, which, I mean, I can't really oversleep because it doesn't really help me out, but either way, it's nothing to be, really, how should I say, worried about. But yeah, let's get right back into it, man. Let's talk about what's been happening lately. Sorry that I haven't really been able to talk as much because of life and work, but I wanted to talk about the Oscar Valdez situation with him being tested positive for steroids after two positive A and B sample phentermine steroids, right? So for those of you that don't know, Oscar Valdez, he had been tested positive for steroids alone, and he is, I want to say, still allowed by the WBC to fight in his upcoming title defense against Robson Conceição. That's the that's the Brazilian super featherweight contender, which surprisingly he actually got a title fight opportunity against Oscar Valdez, which makes zero sense at all. But either way, you can just see that the WBC, they obviously dick ride Mexican fighters, and I don't know how Robson Conceição was able to get a mandatory title shot position, because if I'm not mistaken, I believe Shakur Stevenson, isn't he number one in the WBC? I guess Conceição got selected to become another mandatory challenger or whatever, because obviously he probably thinks Conceição will be an easy task. But then again, why the hell would you want to cheat against a fighter that you could possibly beat? But either way, makes no sense. Oscar Valdez will be fighting next weekend, September 10th. The undercard will have Xander Sayas, which I will be tuning in for that fight. And I forgot some other names that are going to be on there. But either way, it's good to see Xander Sayas on there. That's really what I'm going to be looking forward to. I'm not going to care for Oscar Valdez because, he's a cheating piece of shit. But I will make my statement to say that I believe Oscar Valdez should be stripped of his WBC title, because the WBC is a crooked organization accepted at a higher scale. Even when we saw it from the Canelo Alvarez situation, the WBC still allowed Canelo to fight prior to the Triple G fights. He's been tested positive twice for clenbuterol, but now that we see Oscar Valdez get tested for phentermine, which these are all dangerous drugs, by the way. These are drugs that can easily kill away. But as far as the situation goes, the WBC is walking in cold-blooded hands. That already has bodies, locked into their resume as far as cheating goes, with fighters that have gotten away with cheating, and fighters have been, greatly affected by the corruption and the political legalization protectionism of, especially from the Johan Luna and the Mariano Juarez situation, from the whatchamacallit, a whole bunch of fights, man. Obviously Deontay Wilder, Tyson Fury, and what else? I mean, plenty of other fights, like what, Billy Collins versus Luis Resto, wasn't that sanctioned by the WBC? I mean, it really doesn't matter, because at the end of the day, we've seen it happen so many fucking times, and yet people like to people like to shrug this under the rug, to think that this is all part of the game and we all have to accept this. And no, that is not true. We just recently lost a fighter in Jeanette Zacarias Zapata. May her life and soul, rest in power. I'm not as spiritually, religious, but in the sense of deism, I hope she is doing well, if there is such an afterlife, and I hope her family is doing well. Much love and respect to her. She obviously had some, contemplations of moving up 2 weight divisions to fight a much bigger opponent, and that fight did not go well as organized. And obviously, I don't like seeing fights in Canada be conducted, because Canadian healthcare system is absolutely garbage, and Canadians are pretty stupid when it comes to fighters getting hurt, especially from the Adonis Stevenson situation with Artur Beterbiev. When he got hurt, Adonis Stevenson was not the same fighter, and look at where he's at now. He is no longer boxing, but I think he has some minimal brain damage that could have been resolved a lot better as far as the medical situation in Canada is, which I'm not going to talk about that, but I'm just going to talk about the Oscar Valdez situation, because that's more important. But much love and respect to, Jeanette Zacarias Zapata. I hope she is resting well in whatever spiritual universe that could be out there, and I hope her family is recovering from this. And I hope her opponent is feeling bad about what she did to her, because I would stop boxing if I had killed somebody in the ring. That's just me morally. Some guys probably don't have that, and honestly, if you think that you could just feel good about killing somebody after fighting them and beating them to death in a boxing fight and keep doing that multiple times, then there is something wrong with you, because boxing's not like going into a actual military war and actually killing people for blood. You're going there to make a paycheck and fight somebody voluntarily for the sake of competition, not for the sake of, blood-borne, devious decimation, and to make people suffer for what they go through. So I would hope things do get well for Zapata's family, and I hope her opponent sends her condolences, because I would personally. But if she doesn't do that, then there's definitely something wrong with some fighters in boxing that don't have any soul in the sport, because you really have to be psychopathic to think that you can think that your life's going to be good after killing somebody in a boxing ring. If you did not cheat at all, and you can feel good after coming off of a knockout victory, leading into your next fight feeling psychologically stable. If that were me, I would get the fuck out of boxing. I would not want to start. I would not want to continue fighting more people where I could possibly do the same thing. If not, that shit could happen to me. So either way, I would really stop boxing if your mental capacity is not there. But much love and respect to Zapata. I hope she is resting easy, and I hope her. I really hope her opponent really does something about this to try to send some condolences or some, deep-thoughted respects out to her family. But either way, I don't give a shit about that. I'm just going to talk about Oscar Valdez. Fuck that Canadian bitch. But either way, I'm going to move on to the next subject. What this means with Oscar Valdez is that Canelo Alvarez is a piece of shit cheater. Eddie Reynoso needs to be sent to prison. Oscar Valdez needs to be sent to prison. Canelo Alvarez needs to be heavily fined. He needs to be sent to prison immediately, because what this means out of the whole Canelo stable is that these fighters are definitely on drugs. There's no doubt about it. I think Frank Sanchez, he's a drug cheat, because Frank Sanchez, for those of you that don't know, He's not that big of a big puncher, but when you see him coming out of the Eddie Reynoso camp, or Canelo's camp, what shows to you is that Canelo, he has a body transformation, that doesn't make any sense when coming into training with his team. And it seems like almost every single fighter looks like a super soldier coming out of that camp, which makes no sense whatsoever. And it is so suspect to the point where it makes you wonder, what the hell are they doing? So now, having had 4, if not 5 fighters test positive for steroid performance enhancer drugs, or I'll just say PEDs, this really does put a black eye on the sport of boxing. Because people want to say, oh no, cheating is always caught in boxing, blah blah blah. But right now we're seeing cheating being accepted in a professional sanctioned title bout, where you have a fucking champion by the name of Oscar Valdez defending his title scot's free, full of whatever fucking steroids that's inside his body, to get away with cheating against Robson Conceição. If I'm you, Robson Conceição, I would not want to fucking fight. I would bring this to a federal fucking court, and I would literally sue the fuck out of Oscar Valdez and the WBC. Because if this were me, I would tell them straight up, with my team involved, to say, we're not fighting Oscar Valdez until he is clean. Because what he just did is absolutely disrespectful to the world of boxing and to the sport itself. So now, there's 2 options. One, Conceição, he could just straight up take a big ass risk in getting his ass beat if Oscar Valdez is super juiced up with all these hyper advantages. Or he could probably do the right thing and bring this to a federal court. Because the WBC is not doing anything about this. They say that they have this clean boxing program, which is like the only sanctioned body ever to do that. All the other ones just have straight up VADA, which is like, it doesn't make any sense, because VADA should be enforced as a universal rule to say you have to be a part of this program, because if you do not do this, then you won't get paid for your fight. You won't be able to fight. If you're coming up, off of drugs, or you're doing something really stupid to your body to give yourself the upper advantage, you should not be able to fight. Until you are clean, then you should be able to fight. That is how everything should be in the sport of boxing. If I'm running a fight league in boxing, I'm making sure every fighter is tested, the gloves are checked off, the gloves are worn inside the ring. They're physically put on inside the ring. There's no like locker room, monitorization. It is pure old school style boxing. You come to the ring with your whatever training gloves on, or your fight gloves on, but you take them shits off and you put it inside the ring. Yeah. It makes all the sense in the world to do that, because at least the whole world knows that you can't cheat. Because there's no way to actually cheat. And guess what? It'll be reviewed with people watching you, with the camera on too. So I think that makes perfect sense to bring that into the sport of boxing, if it were completely marketized as a league per se, like the NBA. Because at one point, boxing did have a actual league. It was called the National Boxing Association in America. But to my greatest belief and knowledge, I believe the NBA got outlawed by whatever U.S. federal legislation that gave political legalized protection to allow, or basically replace that with sanctioning bodies like the WBC or the IBF and WBA and WBO, which you can see them more like political party organizations, because that's really what they are. These are people that have a president, they have executive board members, and they all vote like politicians in a sense to say what happens to these champions. in their, respected divisions. You know, you know, and it doesn't really make any sense because, that's not how boxing should be organized. It should be organized as a universalized league per se, where there's like leagues around the world where you compete to the best of your ability against all the top guys out of anybody in the world, and it should be set up as a sense of you being forced to fight the best, and you cannot prove your worth to the world if you're not fighting the best, because that's really what the sport of boxing is about. Just, the best fighting the best. Because the NBA does it, the NFL and all these other major sports do it. So boxing's like the only sport that's not consistent with that principle, because all these good fighters that could be good for the future, they don't want to fight each other, and they make up all this bullshit to say why they can't fight. But you're a professional fighter. You have to run into these guys in the future. There's no such thing as ducking your best competition. Your best competition will eventually come to you, and then they're going to call you out, and then they're going to say, okay, well, why aren't you fighting me, blah blah blah. And I mean, I don't blame those fighters that want to duck, but at the same time, when you come into the sport to be the best of who you could be, you have to take those challenges, regardless, because legacy cannot win you any credibility if you're not going for it. If you're just going for cherry picking, clout chasing, then that's not going to really help you, because you're not really making yourself any better. You're making yourself worse. And when you're like a piece of shit cheater like Oscar Valdez, it makes yourself into a psychopathic retard alone, to make yourself exposed more as a lower level tier fighter. And shout out to all the fighters that called this out: Jamel Herring, Shakur Stevenson, Devin Haney, Andre Ward, obviously retired fighter Caleb Plant, all the fighters that actually did their thing to expose Canelo's team, and I guess like the possible allegations that could be true against them. Because Canelo, he is not that good of a fighter when you do look at it from a physical standpoint. Because when he got into boxing, man, Canelo, he looked like a really small guy coming into the game. But then, slowly but surely, when he gets into training with Eddie Reynoso, this is when Canelo started to have these, massive physical transformations heading into his prime years, leading up to the Floyd fight, which I don't think Eddie Reynoso was training him at the time. But when he did lose to Floyd, or I would even say, prior to, I don't even know, honestly. Like, I don't know when Eddie Reynoso trained Canelo, but I will say, like, after the Floyd fight, when Canelo got his ass beat, that's when Canelo started looking a lot different into his fights, going up against, Triple G, I wouldn't even say about Lara. Lara was naturally beating the crap out of him. But Canelo, he didn't look like he was on steroids. But I will say, leading up to the Triple G era, to the Triple G fights, that's when Canelo looked very suspect with his body transforming. And then he started looking really, really just unnaturally strong, at the upper body. But at the lower body, you could see that his whole solar plex, leading up to the core structure of his upper body, is just completely juiced up. You can tell by, like, I guess at the needle marks that are that are on his body. And I would even say, with all the other fights that he's had with guys like Danny Jacobs, who else? I forgot those other fighters that he fought. Rocky Fielding, right? All these fights that obviously didn't really make any sense per se, because Canelo just looked unnaturally bigger coming into those fights. And Canelo's not that big of a guy, by the way. Canelo's like what, 5'7", 5'8", but yet he fights at like what, super middleweight. But like when you take a look at him back in his 154 days, Canelo was naturally small. He was small for that weight class. So what made you think that Canelo was going to be able to handle with a guy like Jermell or Jamal Charlo, which those guys are naturally bigger in their weight class, weight class alone. And Canelo, he was like not even as physically built like them. Like his body frame and the structure that he carried was not even close to Charlo or Andrade's, physicality and athleticism. But if you take a look at any of his previous fights in the past that people like to shrug off, like where he gets beat up by Miguel Cotto's brother, extremely bad. He was getting rocked. He was getting pieced up. But then somehow, somewhere out of that fight, he was able to knock him out, which didn't make any sense. And I guess Canelo, he probably had to have been on those steroids way past, way before, I guess like the Triple G fights or whatever big fights that he was able to get into. But it's just like Canelo's natural body build is not made for 154. If you know what I'm saying. Like, he's not supposed to be a big guy. He's really technically a small fighter. He's not a big bulky fighter. And I think all this like weight that he has on him is doing him a disservice, and it's not helping his body in the long term, because we could see that Canelo's legs are really not that good either. Like, he has slow feet, but when you look at his legs leading up to his calves and his shins and his and his thighs, it looks like he looks unnatural, compared to his body. His body looks a lot bigger compared to his legs going down, further. And it kind of looks like that you're looking at a super soldier, toy soldier type of shit. You know what I'm saying? So, it's very suspect. And then on top of that, Canelo, if I'm not mistaken, he was really not building up correctly in weight, because he had to fight at catch weights in most of the big fights that he was in, especially in 154. When he fought Lara, he fought him at 155 instead of 154. And then same thing at middleweight. He fought guys at like 164, 165 instead of 160. And then same thing for 168. He'll probably fight at a catch weight at like 170 or 169. So it's like, do we really think Canelo is actually built to be such a big guy? And I'd say no, honestly. I really think, like, if you take all the steroids out of his system, Canelo is probably built to be more like a welterweight if you visualize him back at 154. But even if he was a 154 pounder, he would get stopped by just naturally stronger 154 fighters. Those 154 pound fighters will have a more stronger weight mass advantage over the size over Canelo, because Canelo is not that tall of a fighter. So his only means to success is the pressure on the inside, which he has like a Mike Tyson, like, peekaboo style, which is sort of smart. But I mean, he's not able to have all this power to back up with it, because even when you look at his earlier fights coming into the game, when he was brought onto HBO leading up to a Floyd Mayweather fight, he was getting touched up. He was getting touched up by some unknown Mexican that I forgot that he fought. I think he had like 2 draws in his career. I know that for a fact. But the one fighter that he had a draw with, he was touching up Canelo. He was giving Canelo problems, man. And then same thing with Miguel Cotto's brother. Cotto's brother was piecing him up. Canelo was getting punched from one end to the other end, and you could see that the body transformation of Canelo getting unnaturally bigger and stronger with all this extra weight planted at the upper body, but to the lower body, his legs look so unnatural. You know what I'm saying? Like, his legs don't look right, and his upper body's way bigger than his legs. And it's like, I've been hearing that Canelo, he's actually been having knee problems with his legs, and I guess due to all that weight mass that's being put onto his legs, it's causing a lot of pressure to his shins and to his calf strengths. So it's like, how does Canelo not get injured coming out of these big, hard, tough fights? Which, he really hasn't been in any tough fight as of recently. But I would even say in the Triple G fights, Canelo definitely has to be banged up to his lower body, or to his, to his leg portion of his of his physical build, because of all that unnatural weight that he has forced onto his body. And now I would like to say that it's taking a toll on Canelo, because Canelo does not look like the same fighter coming from 160 or 154. He looks like a slow version of Mike Tyson mixed with a, I don't even want to say Julio Cesar Chavez Sr., but it's like the way he fights. He fights like an old man. He fights like somebody that he would beat you up, but when he throws punches, he throws punches with bad conviction, but like, when do we really see Canelo with actual natural power? When he's been caught with steroids, and he was able to get away with fighting Triple G twice, on steroids, which I do believe, the first time he was able to get away with steroids, and then that's when the WBC was able to up the computeral limit, so you could actually take as much steroids as you want, and then you could flush it out by time when you're ready to fight. But still, you still have like the oh, sorry. You still have like the the remaining drugs that are inside the system that are being flushed out, so your body is like still naturally juiced up from the steroids. So it still gives Canelo like the unfair advantage that he has over anybody. And then on top of that, when he forces guys to fight at a catch weight where he's comfortable at, and then those guys have to weight drain to that weight, like anybody that we've that we can think of. But still, Canelo still has the unfair advantage because he took advantage of those fighters, and he really never fought at at the contracted weight. He's had title fights with guys for catch weights, right? I think with I forgot. I think Floyd Mayweather, him and Floyd fought at catch weight. I forgot. I think it was at 155 or some shit. But either way, it doesn't matter. I mean, Canelo, he is a walking puppet, and he's a walking joke. And I don't really care to speak about him. I really just do care to speak about Oscar Valdez, because he's a bigger problem in this whole solution. This is like the fourth fighter, if I'm not mistaken, that Eddie Reynoso has trained under that's been caught for steroids. The other two fighters is Luis Neri and Julio Cesar Martinez. Those are the other two fighters, and I want to say Ray Vargas. I don't think Ray Vargas is connected with Reynoso's camp, but still, I'll just go with those four fighters because that's the more factual statement. But either way, Canelo's team is very suspect. It really doesn't make any sense of where these guys are coming from, because we can really tell that the body transformation does not look natural. It kind of looks unnatural, trying to see these guys come into the gym the very first day that they train, and then fast forward to 6 months to a year, they're looking like super soldiers, and their frame looks completely unnatural to the point where you really can't tell if they're really training naturally for the fight. And I really just can't tell if it's just either coming from the steroids or it's just them actually training hard to shape up their physique and be ready for a fight. But I mean, when you have four fighters being tested positive for for steroids consecutively, and if not, there could be more fighters on the way that could be doing that, then there's like a lot of questions being thrown about that. So here's my solution. I think Canelo's team needs to be heavily investigated. I think there needs to be a federal court brought to this matter. And if Canelo's team is exposed for taking steroids, I think Eddie Reynoso should be thrown in prison. He should be heavily fined, including Canelo Alvarez. Oscar Valdez, he definitely needs to be thrown in prison. He needs to be stripped. I think that is like the right thing to do because, you know, you've been allowed by the WBC to give you your fight to fight a guy that isn't cheating, and then you're going to get away with cheating against him. That's going to raise a lot of suspected, you know, eyebrows to that fight because, you know, you're now going to see a actual assault being done on a man that didn't cheat, but the other guy has the unfair advantage that's being legally protected by the WBC. That's definitely a red flag, and I really hope Conceição, he does not fight Oscar Valdez come next weekend because, you know, I would not want to fight a motherfucker that is able to, you know, that's able to cheat against me. Unless Conceição, if he wants to cheat, he can come in with tampered gloves and, you know, and beat the shit out of Oscar Valdez. But, you know, I'm not the guy to say, hey, go into that fight, you know, all tampered up and all juiced up, because now that's just going to create a trend for more fighters, you know, to do that, and that's not going to make it any better for the sport to, you know, to fix itself, because right now boxing's at a dying breed right now where everything is just falling apart in the sport and nobody's not going to give a shit about it when, you know, there's going to be some legal action taken upon it. And then when boxing dies, like, let's just say if, like, you know, if the state comes in, you know, at a federal or state level to ban boxing, then what's going to happen? Boxing's going to die in America. You know, I'm just making this shit up, but if boxing were to die in America, then it's going to die in Canada, it's going to die in Mexico. Nobody's not going to watch it when the bigger media outlets are like, wow, boxing is completely over. And when it's over, guess what? It's going to take a long time for the sport to come back. You know, unless, you know, the best fight the best, and boxing is marketized to a league level or to a fight league level where the sport is completely clean and fighters are, you know, fighting to be the best and they get paid good money and they're financially protected before and after their careers, then that's when boxing will be back on top. Because boxing, you know, is a mega paying sport. The problem is that the best don't fight the best all the time. So that's why, you know, you see all these really weird mismatches and these really suspected situations where, you know, you don't really know if this fighter's cheating or not. You know what I'm saying? Like, you know, it really puts a black eye on the sport when you do hear about guys being able to cheat, you know, by the sanctioning body that they're fighting for. Otherwise, boxing would have been clean a long time ago if there was some marketized centralization for it. And I mean, if boxing was organized like the NBA would not even exist. Like, basketball would be shit. Like, you know, like you'd be seeing basketball players get away with cheating, get away with having corrupt referees, having corrupt judges when it comes to, you know, reviewing a play or whatever. And, you know, the games would be so racist and everybody would be shitting on each other. And I mean, that's when the NBA really cleaned itself up, because when the NBA was first introduced, there was a time where the NBA had white players come into the league. But then once they realized that didn't make any sense, and it actually drowned out, I guess, the popularity for basketball back in the old days, back in the early 1900s, leading up until I would say like the 50s. That's when black Americans were brought into the sport, and black people, they were dominating white people. Everybody was so pissed off that these black basketball players were whooping everybody's ass. And when the black basketball players were dominating, before and after when they got accepted into the NBA, they were ultimate superstars. You know, they were household names. You saw the, you saw the Elgin Baylors of the world. You saw the Wilt Chamberlains of the world. You saw the Bill Russells of the world. Shit, you saw every big household name be birthed into the sport of basketball. Because why? There was market, centralization brought into the sport, and those players fought, or those players face each other on an even playing field. But in the sport of boxing, that doesn't happen. It is 9 times out of 10, one fighter has an unfair advantage over the other fighter. Like the situation with Jeanette Zacharias. I think there should be a universal rule saying that if you're going to move up from 2 weight divisions, you have to make sure you are physically, medically cleared to fight somebody that could be naturally bigger than you coming into a fight. And I think that should be a universal rule in boxing. If you're going to move up in weight, you have to be physically, medically tested to make sure you can handle, the pressure of moving up in weight, and then your levels are good, so you have like enough oxygen and you have like enough, how should I say, you have like enough resources in your body to handle the, the damage pressure coming into that weight division. Because there's plenty of fighters that move up and down in weight, and sometimes I kind of feel like, with some of these fighters that do try to weight drain themselves to make a certain weight class, that should be off. Yeah, that should be off. The table. If you're gonna move down a weight or you're gonna move up in weight, you have to be cleared out by a doctor to move down or move up in weight. I think that makes all the sense in the world. If you're gonna move down or move up, a doctor should co-sign it to say that you're ready to fight. Because if you're not able to handle the weight and you look completely, how should I say, drained out, and you don't look like the same fighter as you used to be, that should be a automatic no. This fighter cannot fight at this weight. Your body is not built for this weight class. Your weight certification, limit should be 130 or higher, or 140 or higher, or 160 or higher. That's how I would see it. Because in the sport of wrestling, especially when I was wrestling in high school, I actually had gone through a yearly certification weight cut measure to show how much weight I could cut due to all the body fat that I had. But when I was in high school, the lowest I could cut to was 190.5. And that was actually pretty good, because that actually means that when I moved up in weight, it actually mean that my body is still mostly fat, but the weight that I can cut was a good, at least 50 to 60 plus pounds. But right now I'm 307 pounds, but the weight that I can cut down to theoretically is probably down to 215 pounds, because if I go down to 190, I'm gonna look like a twig. But I think 205 to 215, that's my naturalized walk around weight, because that's what's gonna make me look a lot more sharper and a lot more leaner and fit, versus being like, a very unhealthy version of 190, when I'm not really a cruiserweight. I'm still a natural heavyweight, but I'm a lean, fit heavyweight. I'm not no big brolic guy, which I am big, but if I cut off all this weight by tomorrow or by like a month or two, I would definitely look a lot sharper. So I think that's what boxing needs to have. Boxing needs to have a weight cut clearing screening to make sure that if you're going to move up or move down in weight, you have to be approved by a doctor when you come into your next fight to say, okay, this fighter, he's never fought at 130 before. He's coming up from let's just say he's coming up from 122 up to 130. If he's medically cleared by the doctor to fight at 130, then he should fight an opponent that has the same build as him, to make sure that his body can handle 130, or her body. And then if the fighter is able to manage that weight and handle the punishment, then then by all means, go for it. Because at least that makes a better, how should I say, organized structure of having a better medical clearance system to give fighters, a proper chance to compete at the right weight classes, so they're not draining their body out for failure. Because I tried doing that the unhealthy way for wrestling. I tried not eating, and I tried doing everything unhealthy, where I ended up passing out one time in school, and that wasn't fun. That is something where you could end up getting yourself killed doing that. And I think for the sport of boxing, if you're going to weight cut or do a weight gain, you have to make sure you are cleared before you fight. And I'm not saying before your fight starts, and when you have a fight lined up, you have to be cleared by a doctor before you get a fight finalized, where the doctor can say, okay, is she built for 130? We can see that her body is naturally smaller for 130, but if the doctor says you can't fight, then you can't fight. But if they believe that you can fight, and you have the physicality to handle 130, and you pass through all the physical screenings to become a 130 pounder, go for it. Because I don't want to see another Jeanette Zacharias situation happen right in front of my TV. I want to see a fighter come out clean, and I want to see fighters come out happy and come out satisfied with whatever the victory or defeat may be. Because at least that way they can come back, they can compete at a comfortable weight, and they're not forcing themselves to failure when they're trying to, bump their careers up as they go on. So that's pretty much what I have to say. Oscar Valdez, you are a pure disgrace to your own heritage. Like I said before, I don't hate Mexicans. I got mad love for the Mexican people, but I'm not gonna sit here and dick ride Oscar Valdez, man. I'm not gonna say, oh yeah, he's such a good fighter. He knows what he's doing, and this has only been one time, so just shrug it off. It's not that big of a deal. Yes, it is a big of a deal, because Oscar Valdez could probably do this again. And if he does this again and the WBC allows it, you realize how much credibility that the WBC will lose, but how much racial tensions that will be brought up on this to say that, hey, you're doing this to only black... like you're only doing this to Mexican fighters, but why aren't you doing this for black fighters? Why aren't you doing this for, for Asian fighters? Why aren't you doing this for, Middle Eastern fighters? Like, why aren't you doing this for, for anybody to get away with this? But yet you're doing this for black people, or shit, you're doing this for Mexican people. Don't you know how fucked up that is? I mean, shit, if Amanda Serrano, if she got caught with steroids, do you think she would be able to get away with that? No, the WBC would tell her, no, you're stripped. No, you're fined. You gotta go back to the contender rankings. You're suspended. Does Oscar Valdez get any of that? No. Did Canelo get any of that? No. Did any champion out of a Mexican heritage that represented the WBC get any type of suspension or any type of, how should I say, ban from the WBC rankings when they got caught? And the answer is no. The WBC is a racist, Mexican-driven organization. And sadly enough, I don't have a lot of respect for the WBC. I don't have any respect for any sanctioning body. The only sanctioning body that actually does their job, which would do a much better job replacing the WBC and all other sanctioning bodies, would be the IBO. The IBO is probably one of the cleanest belt organizations I've seen. And the IBA. That's pretty much it. And I'd say maybe the IBC. But either way, I don't want to see sanctioning bodies. You should be able to be paid for who you are as a fighter, and you should not be having to pay out sanctioning bodies just to have a stupid belt, wrapped around your waist. You should be able to make as much money in the sport, and if you win your big fights, or even if you lose, you should get paid a bonus for who you are as a fighter, for coming out, fighting the best all the time, and that's how your career should be settled. You should have all the financial sponsorships, protections, post-retirement savings, everything. Why can't boxing have that? Shit, the NBA has that.
You win the NBA Finals, dude. You still make a lot of money. You get a fat ass bonus paycheck. Boxing don't have that. Where if you unify it, like with like another champion, which honestly, if you had it like set up like fight leagues where you had like a top rank, undisputed champion versus a, let's just say a UFC or a PBC undisputed world champion, that would be so amazing to have that type of stable come together. And there's no politics involved, which there wouldn't be because the guys are free to fight anybody. You can get into a fight league and fight whoever you want to fight. But that's why that I personally would like to see the National Boxing Association be formed, because that would be a really good setup where you have leagues. You have an actual nationalized boxing league where how it's set up as a almost like the NBA in a way, but I would say like you would have like multiple teams of like fighters around the world fighting each other. And you could have like New York boxing team versus these boxing teams, which I wouldn't say it should be set up like the WCL, but let's just say if it's just individualized and you have all the sponsorships like the NBA come inside and help these fighters out. And then what you do inside this league is like the UFC. Everyone's ranked. Like, let's just say there's like about 500,000 fighters that sign up. And you have a top 100 ranking system. And in order to get ranked up higher, you will be put inside tournaments. You will be fighting for mandatory title positions where you have to fight, let's just say, 10 other guys or 5 other women or whatever to make it to these top rankings. And then all the other unranked people, they have to fight, let's just say, 5 placement fights or placement ranking fights. And if you win 3 out of your 5 fights, you could be given the opportunity to fight somebody out of the top 100, and then all the fights get mixed up. You know what I'm saying? So I think, obviously, that's just like a small visualization of what a fight league would be like if it was set up under a National Boxing Association. But it would be a lot better than for what you see now, where the WBC can get away with corrupt, cheating, being sanctioned, and all that shit would be out the window. You have one face, one name per division. Let's just say out of the National Boxing Association, I would probably go with maybe like 2 titles. Have like a East versus Western Conference title, where you have Champion 1 and Champion 2. I would call it like, the I don't know. Oh, I would if the if the National Boxing Association had belts, it would have to be at least 2 belts. It would have to be 2 belts because it's going to be 2 people fighting each other. So if you have 2 belts out of like a top ranked, 100 listed fighter system, that would be pretty good, because what happens is like, you have, a certain section, or you have like a ranked conference section for both sanctioned, championships that will be fought under that league. And then the best fighters out of whoever wins either belt wins. And I mean, I would say the minimum to get up to a world title would be 10 or 10, like at least 10 to 20 fights. I would say 10 to 15. That should be like the ultimate how should I say, cutoff to giving a fighter, a title shot. And then if they win or lose, if they win, they obviously get more money, and then if they lose, they still get a good bonus money, but then they go down a couple ranks, and then you have to work your way back up to the ladder. And I say that makes a lot more sense, because it actually shows like all the other guys, they'll fight each other, but then all you have to do is maybe win 2 or 3 more times, and then boom, you're back inside the conversation. And then for whichever title that you may be lined up to get, you can, you have to work your way back up to whatever shot you can go for it. But if you're gonna say like, okay, if let's just say Vasily Lomachenko, if he loses his title shot against Orlando Salido that beat him, in his, or I don't even want to say that was like an actual title fight, if I'm not mistaken. I'm pretty sure it was, but you can't fight for another world title if you're coming off of like a loss. That should be off limits, because you're taking away the opportunity of other champions to have their shot and have their shine, and you're destroying the sport that way. That should definitely be removed. And also, if you're gonna vacate a title, you cannot come back and reclaim the title, when you vacate it. But let's just say if you're hurt or you're going through some personal issues, you should have like a champion in recess option to be placed in there, and then you have up until, let's just say, a year to or I'd probably say 6 months to a year, depending on how much time you need off. But it would be maximum 1 year, and then if you don't come back within a year, then you are automatically taken off as a champion, and then whoever fought for your vacant title for the time being until you come back, and then you have to fight, the person that won your belt to reclaim your belt, then that makes a lot more sense, because at least that way the best are always fighting the best, and then there's always, there's always like a cycle going on with those fighters fighting each other. So I don't know, there's still room for improvement, but that would be so dope to have it set up like that. You could have ultimate fights being made, but not only that, there could be fight leagues made for the PBC or for Top Rank or for, I don't know, like European Fight League, or like whatever. And I could see, I guess like the cutoff right there, because everybody would say, oh well, if we're gonna have fight leagues in boxing, then is it just gonna be like another UFC where you're gonna see competing fight league, agency, organizations that will just have their own stable of fighters, and then there's still gonna be politics of fighters not wanting to fight each other. And I would say no, because it's like, it's up to the fighter if they want to go over to that side of the street to go test that smoke against fighters from, let's just say, DAZN or Top Rank, or whatever promotional fight league organization that wants to give their name a shine, because it's all for entertainment. But at the end of the day, if we're wanting to see the best fight the best fights will still be made anyway, because guess what? There's no promoter politics. You're just straight up wanting to fight anybody. So it should be up to the team, and it'll be up to the promotional networks that will come together and say, okay, Chantel Cameron, she fights out of DAZN. She wants to fight Amanda Serrano that fights out of, let's just say, PBC, the Showtime stable, where there's a fight league. And if both of them want to fight each other, then it could be a co-promoted event, because that's really what it is. It's just going to be networks. It's not going to be like no promoters involved. Promoters, if they want to become promoters, they're going to be sponsors. They're going to be sponsored promoters. That's what a promoter is. That's someone who sponsors your career, not control your career. So if that's going to be like the better model, kind of like what the NBA does, if you really think about it, because the NBA, they got commercials for the players. They got all these events that players go to. That would be dope if you saw that in the sport of boxing. You see Subway, you see Coca-Cola, you see all these big major market share networks that are coming together, or these businesses that are gonna sponsor the hell out of fighters. Bro, theoretically, a boxer should be almost paid like a billionaire, if not a trillionaire. The amount of money that you could think of, like a Deontay Wilder fighting at a PBC fight league, and the PBC fight league would be so big to the point where you would want to see other fighters from other fight league networks want to test Deontay Wilder, and Deontay Wilder would be like, all right, you want to come over here, then I will request by way of petitioning through my fight league, how should I say, fight league executive board. Like, basically, it would have to be set up a certain way, because every fight league would have their own ranking system, but it shouldn't be biased. It should all be, like, honestly, I think that's why the National Boxing Association should be enforced everywhere, because if those fight leagues are going to be in competition with, let's just say, the National Boxing League, then it should be all centralized as a set model to say, if you're going to be a fight league competing with the NBA, let's just say the NBA, like, I'm not saying basketball, but the National Boxing League Association Academy, or I wouldn't even call it academy. I would say arena, or see, I want to, like, I want to give it like a better abbreviation to not fool people. The National Boxing Competition Association. I don't know. I would still call it the NBA too. The NBA, or actually boxing, boxing league. Yeah, the NBA. Yeah, the NBAL, or the NBA. Or I could call it the NBACL. Yeah, or the Boxing Combat League Association. Nah, I would still keep it the NBA. We'll just call it the NBA too. But yeah, if you had something like that, where you had other competing fight league networks that were having their own promotional stable of fighters, it would actually bring out a better, how should I say, a better exposure of who are the better fighters out of whatever leagues that are coming out of. And then if those fighters want to fight each other, there's no restrictions of those fighters fighting each other. They would still fight each other, but it's coming out of a, co-promoted event where those fighters are fighting for, I guess, like, legacy, because there's no, like, real title gonna be fought on the line. But let's just say, like, Amanda Serrano, she's a champion out of PBC, and Chantel Cameron, she's a champion out of DAZN, and she wants to, promote her undisputed title to Amanda's undisputed title to fight for it, then that will be promoted as a co-promoted unification belt, because Amanda shall have two of those belts representing both networks, which will mean, if she wins or if Chantel wins, that will mean more exposure to the media and more talks about who Amanda Serrano is or who Chantel Cameron is, and it would be a much better fight to look at into the future of where that fight could be, down the line, because people will look at it like, oh wow, this is such a beautiful event, because all the fans from DAZN and all the fans from PBC will now look at both sides of the street fighters, and then they'll be like, wow, I want to see more of this coming from the female side fighting the DAZN side. Yeah, and it's like a team, because it's like, it's a wave of fighters going at it with each other, and there's no restrictions. You straight up fight anybody. Nestor Bravo could fight, let's just say, Joseph Adorno. I would like to see whatever fight, and then let's just say if you win those fights, if you choose to come on to their platform and fight under their league platform, you should be ranked under them. But if you want to just stay in your own stable, then your rank will improve up higher by the next fighter that you fight within your own respective division. I mean, like I said, there's still lots of room of improvement that I would put in there, but that's how I would view a fight league association being built, because that's really how I would like to see it, unless it's just going to be like the National Fight League Association being all centrally marketized to one fight league, where if you want to prove yourself to be the best, you got to go through them. But obviously that's kind of arguing from a monopoly standpoint, to say, well, that would just mean, like, okay, if you want to become the best basketball player in the world, you got to go through the NBA. You just can't go through the Big Three or whatever alternative basketball league that's out there in America, because nobody's not going to know who you are. But that's obviously not true, because if that were true, then the NBA would have been a much more unpopular branding in the first place. If the NBA had all the legalized protection through the state to say that we're the only monopolized business that you have to go through in order to prove yourself to be the best basketball player in the world, and that's simply not true. The NBA is completely diverse,
and they have plenty of smoke available for everyone to compete at a high level. But the reason why the NBA is successful is because the best always face the best. So for boxing, if you had it set up, in that same model, but it has to go through, competing fight league organizations, then I'm perfectly fine with that. Because if you have all the fighters around the world competing each other, regardless if it's going to be for like a belt or not going to be for like a belt, unless they're undisputed champions out of their own respected leagues or wherever platform that they're fighting on, then by all means make the fight happen, because you're technically a marketized free agent, but you're making a lot of money at the same time for it. But back to the Oscar Valdez situation, I think he needs to be prosecuted. I don't think this fight is going to be a very pretty fight to watch. If I'm Robson Conceição, I would file charges, man. I would not want to fight Oscar Valdez. I would straight up tell the WBC I do not want to fight somebody that is going to be able to possibly kill me in the ring. I am going to protect my life with everything that I have, and I should not be able to, go through that. You know what I'm saying? Like, think about it. If Oscar Valdez kills Conceição, next weekend, I'm going to come back on here and I'm going to shit the WBC and I'm going to shit on Oscar Valdez and the rest of Team Canelo. Because you guys are not going to get away with this. I am going to expose, the living fuck out of them. And I will literally create a campaign to advocate for a federal court charge case to be, to be applied onto them. Because it's like, this is, a really big deal. And this is a massive political issue now. Because, like I said, if Oscar Valdez gets away with killing, Conceição, that's going to infuse a massive racial riot. You're going to see so many people that want to chop off Mexican people's heads or do some crazy shit. You know what I'm saying? Like, I'm not saying that is something that could happen, but I don't want to see it to happen because I got mad love for the Mexican people and for anybody that respects me. But I just don't think that is a smart idea what the WBC is doing. And anybody that is dick riding that and protecting that, you're a piece of shit, and you're going to end up getting yourself killed in the future, because what you're doing to the sport is what's going to make the average criminal to come out of their way to do it back to you inside the ring. So that's pretty much what I got to say, man. Let me know what you guys think. Do you support this type of cheating by the WBC? I would hope not, but if you have a valiant position, not some fucking, in your feelings type of shit position where you're going to protect, these fighters and say, well, they're Mexican, so, I'm Mexican, so what does it even matter, though? Or, what does it even matter, senor? It don't matter. It don't matter that he cheat because everybody else, they cheat too. So, we got to cheat because black people be whooping our asses, so that's how we hombres do it. It's fucking priceless, man. And I don't approve cheating out of any sport. I've been watching sports all my life ever since I was born, and I will always say that the worst cheaters will be looked at as they'll be looked at as the greatest frauds in sports history. Ever since I looked at any cheater out of any sport, I never looked at that athlete as the same athlete coming back, because I knew that person was never the greatest athlete coming out of those eras. But the athletes that do come out and show their heart out and prove to you why they are who they are and how much effort that they put into that sport, those are the true athletes that I have a lot of love and respect for. But that's pretty much what I have to say. To hell with Oscar Valdez, to hell with the WBC, to hell with Team Canelo. Charges should be applied to everybody involved. And that's it for me, man. Shout out to the LDBC. Shout out to the mighty, I don't even know, black murderers row, boxers out there, everybody, man. So yeah, this is pretty much what I have to say. I will be keeping you guys up to date of what's going to be happening in the future. I got plenty of other boxing content that I need to cover for the channel, and I am so excited to see what's going to happen in the future. Hopefully we get to see Anthony Joshua and Usyk by September 25th, and hopefully if Fury, if he don't pull out like a bitch again, Wilder Fury 3, that shit can happen. And then after that, we could see maybe Devin Haney, if he can come back before the year's up. I'd like to see him back inside the ring. I heard him and Richard Comey should be in talks. But if that doesn't happen, I am more than willing to see any other big fight that could come out. I know Jaron Ennis, I be hearing that he's coming back. It's going to be awesome, man. So I'll keep you guys up to date. I'm going to keep doing what I do. And that's pretty much it. This is Keanu Rodriguez signing out. And I'm out, man. See y'all later. Bye.